Hey, my name is Melissa, Unlikely Hiker. I was watching a video of Dan from Backpacking Adventures, and I was wondering if he had black flies, just like here. Anyway, he was talking about worst backpacking trip that he was tagged in. I thought I would talk about the worst backpacking trip I ever had. It was about 7 years ago, and I was doing some of the most remote peaks in the Adirondacks. I was going to be out for an entire week. I was doing a few days in one section of the Adirondacks, and then I had to pack up, get in my car, go to a different location, and then I was going to backpack the most remote mountains that I had not gotten to yet. So this was before I had a lot of ultralight gear or even lighter gear. A lot of what I had was old, it was heavy. I had this huge 65-liter EMS backpack that did not fit me correctly. I mean, all my gear was not great, but I didn't know any better. You know, I went out there and I usually had a really good time. But this particular time, I had 3 rainy days over in the Seward Range, and it was just miserable, like absolutely miserable. But it actually got worse. So I headed over to Adirondack Lodge parking lot, and I was hiking out to do Marshall, Cliff, Redfield, Skylight, and Gray. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 mountains in a few days. And everything I had sort of strung out in the back of my car. I slept in a parking lot overnight to let my gear dry before I headed back in. And I'm packing everything back up and I head out. Now keep in mind, my pack is like 50 pounds. Seriously, like 50 pounds. It was absolutely out of control. I had changes of clothes. I had heavy food, just nonsense, absolute nonsense. So I hike in. I had tripped over one of the boulders going through Avalanche Lake, and I was laying there like a turtle, and it was just awful. I couldn't get myself up. I was kind of sad nobody had a camera to actually catch that,
because that would have been funny.
So I continue on. I was at the bridge where Lake Colden is, and this really nice guy who happened to be a guide, he gave me a hot cup of coffee. So that was definitely a big it's a you problem, not a me problem. So this nice guide gave me a hot cup of coffee, and he pointed out how incredibly heavy my pack was. He offered to do a little pack shakedown, but it didn't really matter. I didn't have any other gear. So I went up to hike Marshall, which I have now dubbed Mushel. And anybody that's hiked Marshall, you know that once you get to a certain point, there are herd passages scatter in every direction. And they're all like knee-deep mud. I mean, it's absolutely out of control. Almost lost my shoe. It was a crazy hike up. It was, for me, you know, being years ago, pretty difficult herd paths to follow up. I did make it to the summit. It actually sucked. And then I hiked to camp that night, and this is where it just got awful. So I'm at the lean-to, but I unpack all my stuff. There's some guys camping next to us, and I'm asking them about Cliff and Redfield, which I'm gonna hike the next day, and they're telling me about all the mud and all the cliffs on Cliff, and you know, I'm just like, whatever, you know, it's just mud, it'll wash off. And I'm unpacking all my stuff, and I go to take out my sleeping pad, and I didn't have my sleeping pad. I brought my 2-legged A-Light Monarch chair instead. It happens to be the same color as my first sleeping pad and the same size and the same little stuff sack. They're both blue. So for 2 more nights, I had to sleep with a damp sleeping bag covered in mud, completely defeated, with no sleeping pad on the floor of a lean-to. Yeah, that actually sucked. My spirits were lifted by the time I got to Skylight because it's such an amazingly beautiful mountain. But then I realized I had to hike out over the floating logs. This is back when they were still floating and not completely submerged. So yeah, good luck with that, guys. Anyway, you know, that entire week was difficult, and it was just one thing that piled right onto the next. That started with the 3 days of rain in the Sewards, and You know, that range is pretty difficult. I was solo for 3 mountains and I had company for another. I was actually crying in my car because I didn't think I was going to be able to do it. And then, you know, move forward, start the hike, trip and fall, kind of hurt myself, have somebody tell me how incredibly heavy my pack is. This is crazy. How can you carry this? You know, and then be in knee-deep mud up Mushel and continue on to the lean-to, only to have no sleeping pad. That actually sucked so incredibly bad. But it makes for a really good story now, you know? I mean, woe is me, right? But it did not deter me. So I was by myself this whole trip. It did not deter me. And I think that's the big takeaway here. So there's always going to be good trips and bad trips, and trips that just suck a little bit more because of weather usually, or gear failure. Mine was kind of a little bit of both. But just get out there. I'd like to tag in this video Jay from ADK Woods Walker. I want to hear about your worst trip. And Nicole from Nicole Hikesalot. I want to hear about your worst trip too. So I can't wait to see it. Thanks for watching. Get out there, live your life. Take care. Bye-bye. Let's go. Come on. Whoops. Aw.